Alright, YouTube, I thought I'd weigh in on the San Francisco circumcision ban. Yeah, see, that's me
Cool.
there. Basically, San Francisco is putting on ballot for public vote proposed ban on circumcision. That is male circumcision, not female circumcision is already illegal, I believe, in this country for the most part. But basically, that this would prevent males up to age 18 from being circumcised. The supporters, of course, are saying the reason that they're pushing for this is because, number one, it's not really a medical procedure which is necessary. Number two, it's painful, which I think is kind of obvious when you're chopping off a piece of your penis. So painful, unnecessary. And number three, even if a person wants to be circumcised, they're really not making the decision themselves. The parents are making the decision for them. We don't allow the parents, for instance, to tattoo their newborns with a number saying, you know, well, here's your number, and or this is your name, or whatever, or, you know, mutilate any other part of their bodies, but circumcision has held on. And the reason why circumcision is done so often, I'm circumcised myself. I have no problem with it, and I don't care. But looking at the issue, it really shouldn't be a parental rights issue. It should be an individual's rights issue. Each person has the right to decide what they want done to their body. There is no medical reason that people need to be circumcised. Now, a lot of people have argued this, that, oh, well, women prefer a man who's circumcised. Well, that could be true, at least for this specific culture, because this culture, most people are already circumcised. Most people in this country are Christians already, and Christians have a tendency to circumcise their children, so naturally most of the males in this country are circumcised. But the response to that would merely be, if a male reaches the age of 18 and they want to get circumcised, go ahead. That's their right. If they believe that to follow their God's law or do whatever else they need to do requires circumcision, let them get circumcised. The problem is this, and I've argued against parents choosing their child's religion before. Jewish and Muslim parents and some Christian parents are clinging to this belief of circumcision, and they are saying, I have the right to force my child to undergo a strictly religious ceremony, because let's not joke around. This is a religious thing. There's no other reason for circumcision other than it's cultural and religious. The parents are basically claiming they have the right to do this to the child against that child's will. But in reality, they shouldn't have that right. As the primary caregivers for their children, the parents are supposed to be using legitimate, reasonable, rational thought to take care of their children. They're not supposed to be, you know, zealots and fanatics who say that if you have a half-inch long flap of skin at the tip of your cock, you're going to hell. That doesn't make any sense. Why are people so up in arms about this? It makes absolutely no sense. And the conservatives will say, oh, well, all these godless San Francisco liberals, they're just trying to attack the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims and all these groups. They just want everyone to be godless heathens like them and be uncircumcised and sodomize people and run around having orgies and smoking weed and doing everything else. These terrible, terrible liberals. And you get it, Glenn Beck had it on his program, and Bill O'Reilly had it on his program. Oh, how terrible these people were for trying to ban circumcision. These poor Jews, the Jews, it's just like the Holocaust. And I was thinking to myself, how is this even remotely similar? Nobody's saying that Judaism is bad, or Islam is bad for commanding circumcision, or that Christian families are bad for following some cultural tradition because most of the males are circumcised in most Protestant Christian groups at least. Nobody's saying that that's a problem. What we're saying is that an unnecessary medical procedure, which is clearly painful and clearly unnecessary and doesn't really serve any purpose, is, I mean, what if the culture said, well, women are supposed to have plastic balls implanted underneath their skin so that they're all bumpy because our God commands it? Would we continue to do that body modification, or would we eventually wise up and stop trying to find medical reasons to back it up and say that's ridiculous? What people are doing, they're saying, well, uncircumcised males, they have sexual dysfunction, and there's, it's not clean and stuff. There's really, no, that's not true at all. Look at the research. There's no reason. It appears as though it would be less clean to be uncircumcised, but really there's no linkage between that tiny flap of skin if a person is intelligent enough to pull it back and clean underneath it. And, of course, so in some groups you can't give them credit for being that smart. The average adult, and even the average child, understands that you're supposed to clean underneath it. If people aren't cleaning underneath it, and they're getting infected, that's their own personal hygiene problems. I would say the chances are their hygiene's going to be bad whether they're circumcised or not. They're going to not be clean whether they're circumcised or not. They'll just end up getting infected somewhere else, on their ass crack, or behind their ears, or somewhere else you're really supposed to wash, but they won't. That's the issue here. So we have a bunch of right-wingers claiming, well, it's cleaner, and we're just attacking the Jews. None of that makes any sense at all. Nobody's attacking the Jews. We're just saying that something that Jews happen to do is stupid. It is stupid for them to force their children to have the tip of their dick chopped open at a young age for absolutely no reason, other than to appease their useless, impotent Jehovah, who is just a tyrant in the sky, who also, by the way, commands people not to eat shellfish. But Americans love shellfish. And you're not supposed to work on Sunday, but plenty of people do that too. Plenty of Christians and Jews work on Sunday. So why is it that this one particular command is just so overarchingly important that we can't do anything about it? And yet this is the one example of a command that's actually hurting individuals in the process. But we've got to leave that alone because we might piss somebody off. Doesn't make any sense that circumcision is still performed. If somebody reaches 18, they say, my cock would look better without the foreskin. Let them get circumcised. It's their choice. They're an adult. I would even argue that someone younger, like 13 or 14, should be able to make that decision, but I'm a libertarian, so I believe that younger individuals should have more of the rights that adults do. I wouldn't have any problem with a 12 or 13-year-old choosing to be circumcised, but before the baby's even able to talk, they're saying, well, chop the tip of the dick off. They don't have a say in it. You wouldn't let them give a 1-year-old lip implants or breast implants or any of these other things that adults do to modify their bodies to be more in line with what they want or what they view society or God or whatever is wanting. We don't allow female circumcision, which is really probably about the same level of pain. So why do we allow male circumcision? It doesn't make any sense. All it is at this point is it's cultural. That's all it is. People say, well, my father was circumcised, my grandfather was circumcised, and blah, 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 and all the way back everyone was circumcised. Well, that's great. The Bible also condones slavery, and for a very long time we had that. Should we go back to having slaves because it was a tradition? By God, Jehovah will abandon us if we don't have slaves. If we don't do what the Bible says, Jesus is going to come down out of the sky, he's going to rain lightning and thunder down, everyone's going to fucking die. Did that happen when we banned slavery? Or when we went against the verse 2 Timothy 2:12 that commands women to be silent and not to teach or have authority over men while we let them vote? There are female teachers, there are female professors, there are female politicians. Where's all this lightning coming from the sky? Is God angry? Does God give a shit? I would say God doesn't give a shit one way or the other if he even exists. All the stuff in the Bible and, the hadiths and the Quran and all these things commanding, well, you must chop the foreskin off. Why? Do the Eastern cultures do that? Does anybody give a shit? No. It's just a cultural thing at this point. There's no real reason to do it. So I support the San Francisco ballot initiative to ban circumcision, and I hope it passes because it would set a precedent in this country that, no, we're going to progress forward, and individuals will have their rights at birth, and we're not going to listen to the religious fanatics. That makes sense. And it's not just a bunch of godless liberals people who support this understand that individual liberty trumps parental rights, it trumps culture, and it trumps everything else.